Our next poem is Ode to Autumn, one of the flawless, perfect work of art. We are going to take up this poem for detailed analysis. The ode can fittingly be described as perfect work of art, flawless in detail and composed in a mood. It's a satisfying whole which presents, unlike the Nightingale, not just a passage of experience, but an experience which is complete. Keats' ode embodies the truth that ripeness is all. The ripeness with which Keats is concerned is the physical ripeness of autumn, and his genius manifests itself in the sensuous richness with which he renders this in poetry without the least touch of artistic over ripeness. To Autumn is one of the last poems written by Keats. His method of developing the poem is to keep imagery typical of autumn. His autumn is early autumn when all the products of nature have reached a state of perfect maturity. So autumn is personified and is perceived in a state of activity. In the first stanza, autumn is a friendly conspirator working with the sun to bring fruits to a state of perfect fullness and ripeness. In the second stanza, autumn is a thresher sitting on a granary floor, a reaper asleep in a grain field, a gleaner crossing a brook, and lastly a cider maker. In the final stanza, autumn is seen as a musician, and the music which autumn produces is as pleasant as the music of spring. The sound of gnats, lambs, cricket, robin, and swallow make a chorus. This ode has a focus upon the season of autumn, which stands for fructification, fruition, fullness. At the same time, it stands for drowsiness, dullness, conspiracy, and death. Reading the text, seasons of mist and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vine that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the moss cottage tree, and fill at all fruits with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plum and hazel shell, with the sweet kernel to set budding more and still more little flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cell. The three stanzas of the poem Ode to Autumn tells the progress of the season. Stanza 1 characterizes autumn in her activity as a bringer of the seasonal fruit. Stanza 2 narrows the focus of description onto autumn as a figure resting from the harvest toil. Stanza 3 watches the end of the season as seen in the countryside declining and merging into earlier winter. The process of seasonal change through these three stages is rendered with a movement so delicate that it's almost imperceptible. In the opening line, we are confronted with a paradigm of the season's mood, beginning strikingly with a reminder of the last days of autumn, is first hailed as the season of mist, that is, a season of mellow fruitness. Mellow, a broader sound suggests the development achieved in stanza 2, while fruitfulness glances at autumn in her first capacity, fecund and beneficial. Autumn is established as a primal creative force working with the sun to bring to fruition the year's harvest. She is the maturing sun's close bosom friend, conspiring with him how to load and bless. The physical intimacy of first phrase, the hint of secrecy and purpose in the word conspiring, and the intention to load and bless. All these details suggest a union of male sun and female autumn, which is both fertile and holy, and which to the poet is awe inspiring in its mystery. The beauty and wonder of natural growth, which the remainder of the stanza is concerned with, are thus dignified and placed within the term of a superhuman ordinance. The seven infinitive verbs from line 3 to 9 are all dependent on the present participle conspiring. The process these words denote are not permitted to seem autonomous or automatic, for behind them is their director and source of energy. However, six of these verbs are monosyllabic, and each of them stands at the head of the successive statement, heavily stressed and in a prominent position. Detail, he is then ready to place the whole in the context of the time, and with the repetition more and still more, and the word later a sense of duration is born. This is strengthened in the final two lines, where the perspective extends forward as the bees think warm days will never cease, and the backward into summer. This last section of stanza 1 places autumn in the cycle of the season and initiate the temporal movement which was before withheld in favor of emphasizing the prime aspect of early autumn, that of full and final growth. Stanza 2 continues the development of the season. Growth and enrichment are to run their natural course, and we have reached the stage of harvesting. No longer is autumn characterized by her dynamic, energizing powers. The radical question which opens the second stanza, there is a new easiness to tone after the rather formal apostrophe to autumn, the deity of primal force, which opened the stanza first. And this sense of relaxation is not only in the obvious physical repose of autumn sitting, sound asleep and drowse, but also in the casual general autumn is now resting after the period of creative activity, and of the four vignettes which place her as a figure in a harvest scene, three catch her in the moment of repose or rest. Text now, who hath not seen thee oft amidst thy soul, sometime whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on the granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowy wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound sleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hooks spare the next swath and all its twined flowers, and sometime like a gleaner thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cedar press with a patient look thou watchest the last oozing hours by hours. So autumn is seen to be sitting in the granary store, and she's a deity presiding over the harvest. Keats has discovered a deity which is available next door. Autumn is now resting after the period of creative foresight which placed her as a figure in Catch Her in a Moment of Repose. The personification incidental for the physical details are integrated scene in which the personal manifestation is sitting on a granary floor, her hair caught winnowy wind as a gleaner she studies the burden, and elsewhere we receive an impression of a bodily form only as she is lying asleep and watching the cedar press. Thus, our attention is present but on her participation in certain maintained between the figure and its context. This stanza and the scene changes while time stands still, which is generated toward the stanza's close, where thou watchest the last oozing hours by hour, last glance and echo of the richness of the time, and the present and future they are given length of hours. Superficially, the stanza conveys the feeling of ease and relaxation, yet beneath the contented surface is the counter movement of tension. In stanza 1, she has prospered the harvest. She was the beneficent deity of the countryside, maternal in her creative force. In stanza 2, the fruits of the years are to be gathered. Autumn changes her aspect to become reaper with a hook and a gleaner bearing away the grain on the head. The attendant of the cedar press watching as it were the very essence of the season extracted to the last drop, or is to be found in the granary, which is no mere storehouse for the harvest, but the place where flayed grain is released from the husk by winnowy wind. To man, these are the events of the season and takes their place in the natural cycle of the year. The earth must render its fruit. The gentle movement of the stanza confirms the order of nature is fulfilled here. Nature is here a perfect deity, a benign, benevolent deity. But Keats makes us aware of a season, an opposing undercurrent is visible. Beauty, the fullness of life, the achievement of spring is being removed from its birthplace, the land to be used. It is the paradox of time as it gives life so much for a moment. Autumn, the reaper is close to time with the head moving across the brook. The laden head is moving on the brook, and she is determined and inexorable. Harvest is reluctant at being reaped or gathered and tries successfully to foil autumn at her menacing task. The poppies would have fallen victim to her hook, but she has drowsed in the act of reaping into a deep sleep. The hook itself has entered into the conspiracy to halt autumn. It spares, autumn does not. The flowers in the swath about to be cut are twined. They have grown intimately among the corn to become an emblem of love or happiness, which the reaper will destroy, but at least their interlocking can be heroic gesture. Another hindrance to the reaper's progress. All is in vain, however, autumn is next seen as the gleaner. The grain is cut despite the reluctance of the flower, the assistance of the poppies, and the mercy of the hook. The gleaning of the subtle fields are borne away. The brook, a dormant obstacle, cannot halt autumn. So she keeps the steady that's implies that implies determination as well as physical stability, a determination which is present to the stanza's end, which autumn watches patiently beside the press as the apple slowly surrender the last of the juice. And now the closing stanza, where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them. Thou hast thy music too, while barred clouds bloom the soft dying day and touch the subtle plain with the rosy hue. Then in the wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river swallows borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies. The light wind lives or dies, and old full-grown lamb loud bleat from the hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, and now with the treble soft the red breast whistles from a garden clove, and gathering swallow twitter in the sky. To anticipate and meet the hints of sadness which accompany autumn's close, Keats makes a beautifully judged entry to this stanza, the closing stanza. The first radical question is spoken from the depths of the poet's reverie. For a brief instant he is seized with regret as his thoughts are returned to spring. He is weighing the seasons and their attractions against each other, and for an instant at least consider the passage of the year to be declining. Out of this consideration grows the second question, posed in the spirit of gentle challenge, as if Keats is turning outwards and addressing his reader and asserting to them that the loss of spring with this song is irrevocable. With this, the repetition of the first question, the hint of regret strong at the outset, is now slightly diminished as Keats relegates the songs of spring to their only proper place in time past. And this correction of feeling away from the yearning of nostalgia which enervates, not inspires, is toward a positive and the final discrimination, the recognition of the very special beauties which are to be found at the end of the season of autumn. This discerning appreciation becomes more pronounced in the second line, which is trenchantly addressed to autumn herself in reassuring that her clothes can match the very different song of spring. Here is a gradual disengagement from the fullness of early teeming autumn and the relaxed physical ease of the after harvest. Now autumn is celebrated with the least concern and concrete sense of perception, that of hearing. So in the third stanza, time is presented as the controlling force in autumn's last phase, remembering that by contrast in stanza 1, until its presence was more explicitly indicated in line 9 and 10, time had remained a gentle, almost unperceived seasonal movement implicit in the activity of the verbs of growth. Time in the third stanza is treated emphatically and with overt reference to death, with such phrases as the soft dying day, the small gnats mourn, the light wind lives or dies, and the scene we move through is that of evening on a day of late autumn when all things seem to be approaching their end. This surely enough is the time and the hour for the baleful choir. Even the visual beauties of the countryside are fleeting. The clouds caught in the rays of the setting sun warm the evening scene with a glowing red casting across the harvested field a reflected radiance. But this is a borrowed charm, a bloom on the face of the soft dying day, as external as the rosy hue or color which touches the subtle plane. The voluptuous warmth of color is a surface attraction which does not hide the sharp austerity in sound and meaning of these subtle plane. The scene is beautiful but heavy with pathos. The five sounds lead us away from the farm scene of the previous stanza as we cross the harvested field to the river bank, listen to the sheep on the hillside beyond, and then finally glance upward into the sky where the swallows are gathering for their flight to warmer land. Life, Keats tells us in this last detail, goes on elsewhere and will return to the land which now seems bereft. It's a large and almost empty scene from which we are gently withdrawn as the visual details lead our attention onto of the land and into the sky. The sense of perspective or depth is a remarkable achievement which deepens partly on the way in which our mind's eye moves across the expanse of the field to the clouds on the horizon, and partly on the details of sound, the loud bleat of the sheep which carries across the countryside, and the soft note of the robin near at hand. This spaciousness and emptiness is the distinct contrast to the close and the physical proximity of growth and crowded richness which characterizes the season's height. It's a levitating, free from nostalgia, which satisfies us to the beauty of the season even now, in its decline and death, and which confirm the natural cycle of life, which is above regret and which, as Keats would have us think, needs only be to recorded to be accepted. So, Keats' Ode to Autumn gives a perfect picture of life from birth, maturity to the end. So, it's a perfect emblem of human life, an emblem of natural deity. Thank you.